Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Here I am, rested up, alive, and, well, sort of well. Okay? I'm glad to be home. Glad to be starting this up again, I think. And lots of stuff to talk about. I really took the week off. I mean, I did not watch news or read much of anything. And I don't think I missed much. Same old, I think. Absent some Supreme Court rulings that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about. Oh, dear God. So, I don't know. The problem now is where to start. I guess let me do what we used to do in school at the end of when you started the school year. My idea and my summer vacation. So can I tell you just a few observations and stories in my last 10, 11 days? Driving out of Pittsburgh a week ago, last Thursday, right, was surreal. It was one of those days when the air quality was off the charts in the wrong direction. And I had not, on one of those days, driven toward the downtown. It really was frightening. I knew the city was there. That skyline we all know, I couldn't see it at all. There's a vague sense of what I still call a U.S. Steel Tower. A vague sense, but I knew it was there. I mean, that was something. And then as I was driving, I was thinking, you better put your air. I was worried that the air conditioner was pulling in that noxious air and I'd be dead before I hit Steubenville or something. So I did realize that I had a thing in my car that, circulates the air inside a button, and I pushed it, and then I felt like I would make it past Steubenville. That helped. But there was this sense of, oh my God, look at this. And I drove across Ohio into Indiana and into Illinois, and it was the same everywhere I went. And I kept checking the air quality when I would stop for gas, and it was horrific. It was over 100 everywhere I went across that whole swath of the country. So as I approached Chicago, oh dear, I couldn't see it either. And that's another skyline I know so well. It was totally shrouded. So that was unsettling. And then the first few days I was in Green Bay, the air was as bad as it's ever been there. It was one day it was 150 something. So my intent had been I was going to go there and try to get in my mother's swimming pool and do some rehab exercises on my messed up leg and ankle. And I couldn't go out. I have asthma and I'm old. So there's that. And, and you look at the paper today and, it's been 110 or plus in Phoenix and parts of Arizona for the last 7 days or 8 days. And the National Weather Service is saying there's easily going to be 8 more, over 110. And then you look at that flooding. What, 10 inches, 8 inches of rain in 6 hours in New York State, and the flooding, roads washed out. It occurs to me that do the people who, Republicans, do they ever acknowledge how wrong they were, saying that those of us who are concerned about what we used to call global warming and then stopped calling global warming because whenever there was a cold snap in some month when it's supposed to be warm, the Republicans would all start, oh, gee, global warming. How come I'm making a snowman in my front yard? So that kind of, refusal to acknowledge the science. Are they now seeing that maybe what the news media, the mainstream news media was telling them was the truth? That what science was warning about was the truth? We are just starting to see it for ourselves. Starting to see that you can't see the city. Starting to see that the air that we took for granted could be poison. Starting to see all these 1,000-year millennial events. Do they ever acknowledge that they were wrong? Horribly wrong. And that they stood in the way of getting anything done in a proactive manner to keep us from getting to the point where we are. And they continue to keep us. Senator Joe Manchin, good God in heaven. I happened to see that astonishingly good documentary from, I don't know, the 70s, Harlan County, USA, about a coal miner strike. It's astonishing. And then you're reminded again of how the coal miners went in there and sacrificed their lives and their health, dig that coal out of the ground. And we were told by people who knew better that it was not harming them as they dropped one by one from black lung. God almighty. I just sometimes wonder, do they ever see the Republicans? How their refusal to deal with change, with reality, harms us. So I'm going across the country, which I can't see, and when I get out of the car, I actually put a mask on. I was the only person with a mask on. I figured everybody would look at me and say, God, look at that old. Bet she's a Democrat. I was going through, of course, Trump country. And then, if I could back up a little bit, so I made it to Youngstown, Steubenville, and then Lordstown. Oh my God. Because I've driven the Ohio Turnpike quite a bit in recent years, I've watched as that massive factory I mean, the size of it really is astonishing. It must have provided good paying jobs for, I can't even begin to imagine how many people. And I watched as it shrunk. I watched as there was an attempt to salvage it. I watched as it became Lordstown Motors or something. I watched as they started putting out a car. I watched as that disappeared. I watched as I could never quite, and there was next to no activity there. Parking lot's not very full. It's gone now. I mean, the building is there like some massive monument to capitalist greed. There's a sign up now. It says, I can't remember. Is it say Foxconn? It turns out that this Taiwanese company, Foxconn, which I keep seeing, because it turns out it's like the largest supplier of something major in the industrial world, computers. I think they make Apple phones. Foxconn. I keep seeing it. You even see it when I drive, as I'm driving from Chicago into Wisconsin and toward Green Bay. In southern Wisconsin, Racine, Kenosha, there had been for years unbelievable construction because Foxconn, brought in by, you'll recall, the horrible Republican Governor Walker, the one who turned Wisconsin into a proud blue state, into a right-wing, red, ugly state, divided state. Walker had brought in Foxconn, given them the store, given them everything, all the tax write-offs, everything. I remember Donald Trump showed up and they did a big to-do about how Foxconn was coming in and they were going to build something. I can't remember what exactly. It was going to save Wisconsin's economy. Nothing ever happened. Foxconn also came in to save Lordstown. Yeah, it did. Donald Trump turned up there, too, when Foxconn came. Said it was a boon to Ohio. That was 2019. Lordstown sold its factory to Foxconn, and then Foxconn backed away, leaving Lordstown with nothing. It filed for bankruptcy, and now you drive by that huge empty factory. And then I read today, Foxconn just screwed India in the same way. They had gone into some big deal. The Indian government was so billions and billions of dollars. Yeah. Foxconn turned and walked away. Who is this Foxconn that screws people and countries and states and cities and lives? God. Okay, so there's all that. Mostly totally depressing. Did I mention the Saharan dust storm crossing the Atlantic, soon to hit the great state of Florida? Good. They got algae blooms and seaweed blobs, and now they're going to have some African dust to add to the mix, and I couldn't be happier for them. Okay, before I get too obnoxious down, I got to tell you a story. So, one of the joys, of course, of going to your old hometown is, I don't know, there's tradition there. There's places, there's a lot of places you don't, towns, God, Green Bay looks nothing like it did when I was a kid, but there are places that are still there and still wondrous. And one is an old, I've probably talked about it before, it's an old hotel that has been there since I forget what. I mean, it's just it still looks like it did when it was built, like 1880. Standing on the corner of the little town, De Pere, Wisconsin, which is also where St. Norbert College is, that my family is so tied to. And De Pere is about 2 miles from our house. The Union Hotel has stood there forever, and on its first floor is a restaurant, the Union. And it is like walking back into the past. It has changed very, very, very little. And same owners. You walk in, it's one of those, again, places where you're greeted because they know you. Known you for generations. Watched you grow up and grow old. And we went, my mother, my sister, her daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law, we went one night for dinner. And when we walked in, the owner was there. His name is McKim. His first name is McKim. And McKim just beamed when he saw my mom come through the door. Mrs. Miller, he said, oh, how wonderful to see you. And I said something because I'm always bragging about her. McKim, I said, she's going to be 101 in about 5 weeks. He said, whoa. He said, matter of fact, I got another 101-year-old woman celebrating her birthday in the dining room right now. I said, what? Mom, did you hear that? Somebody older than you. She beat you out. She's already 101, and she's celebrating at the Union too. And so, being me, I walked right into the dining room. Now, there's a fancy dining room, and then there's a sort of a booth area, which is where we were going to eat because it's just more relaxed. And I walked I scanned the dining room. It ain't that big. Can't be more than 12 tables, 14 tables. I scanned and I saw what had to be the 101-year-old woman. Although, man, she looked good. She really looked good. And I walked over, obnoxiously, I guess, unannounced, and she was there with two middle-aged people, a couple, who I took to be her children. And I said, I'm sorry, excuse me. I just wanted to come and say, geez, happy birthday. And then I said, and I'm here with my mother, who's going to be 101 in just 6 weeks. And the 101-year-old birthday girl is looking at me, and it's only then that I see that she's glowering. I mean, glowering. And she disregards me, looks right at the poor woman who was sitting next to her, I thought her daughter, and she said, how dare you? Did you tell everybody how old I am? I look out of my right peripheral vision and I see my 101-year-old mother toddling up behind me. big grin on her face, wanting to say hi to the other 101-year-old woman. I sort of wave her off as she's grinning and waving because the glowering old crone is going on and on berating this woman. And I thought, I guess I better retreat. And so I muttered something about have a wonderful time, and I started to back away. And we then went and sat in the more downscale booth area and laughed about the 101-year-old bitch. I often thought that my mom is living so long because she just loves life. I mean, she loves people, and that's got to be something that, has something to do with longevity. And then after meeting that other one, oh boy, I don't think so. I mean, you can be the nastiest piece of work in the world, and she really looked good, the 101-year-old bitch. So while we're eating, in comes the daughter, the woman who had been berated. And she had gone looking for us. And she said, I just wanted to apologize. I said, geez, is that your mom? And she said, oh, no. God forbid. Oh, no. She said, she's a cousin. And my husband and I drive up here from Chicago to take her to dinner on her birthday. And she's been nothing, but she's always like this, just complaining and screaming at us. And I said, why the hell do you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you take your entire lovely weekend to come and get that awful human being and take her to dinner so she can sit there muttering and being mean to you, and then you have to drive all the way back to Chicago? What? So I said, look, if there's a heaven or a hell, man, you go into heaven, and I hope to hell she goes to hell. God. Anyway, we all commiserated and laughed and blah, blah, blah. Now, the heaven and hell thing comes back into the picture because as we're leaving, and my mother and I are walking together, I hear a waitress taking the order of the guy in the last booth, the guy and his wife. And she's saying, baked potato, hash browns, and I was going to say, hash browns, you gotta have the hash browns, they are the best, and I bit my tongue. I thought to myself, you have inserted yourself unannounced and uninvited already tonight. Shut the F up, I said to myself. And then I heard the man say, hash browns. And I said, great choice. And then we started talking. And, of course, the subject of the fact that there were 201-year-old, essentially, women in the place. And this guy's wife says to my mom, oh, my God, well, you just look wonderful. And, oh, my heavens, how wonderful. And then it became obvious why she was saying it was so wonderful. She starts telling my mother how lucky my mom was that she was almost dead. I kid you not. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. Oh, she said, you are so lucky to be so close to the kingdom of heaven. And my mother's looking at her and thinking, I could see it. I know my mom. She's thinking, she wouldn't say it this way, but she's thinking, what the fuck? How wonderful. And then and my mother said something like, well, and the woman would have no negativity about it. Oh, you will be at the right hand of your Lord, and how, and when I did something shameful, I abandoned my mother. I know my mom, and I knew she was going to probably say something that would, I don't know. I couldn't imagine what was going to come out of my mom's mouth, and I didn't want to be there. Even though I had caused the whole thing by saying, good choice. Jesus Christ. So I ran. And I ran into the next room, which is like a little parlor, the old little parlor of the hotel. And I saw my sister. I said, Susan, that woman in there is telling Mom how lucky she is to be almost dead. And Susan thinks, oh, God. And then we all just started cracking up. We just cracked up laughing. We were laughing so hard. Mom eventually emerges. And I don't think that she really laid the woman out or anything. But we were laughing so hard. And McKinn came over, the owner, and said, what's going on? And we told him. And he said, oh, gosh, oh, my Lord, I'm so sorry, he says to my mom. And she says, oh, it's nothing. And he said, just another night at the Union, because he had witnessed the dining room debacle. He missed the, how wonderful, you're almost dead debacle. And then we just beat a hasty retreat and got the hell out. But, yeah, that was my best night in Green Bay. But it is nice when you're able to go back to places that are, that you've been to for like all major events, anytime, it was always the Union. So just wanted to say, you could look it up. The Union Hotel was Vince Lombardi's hangout as well. He lived like halfway in between our house and the Union. We're all living sort of on the Fox River, which flows north into Green Bay. The large thumb of Lake Michigan is Green Bay. And he and his coaches were there all the time. And obviously a lot of players there all the time as well. One of Lombardi's inner circle lived at the Union Hotel, which just freaks me out because I've seen the upstairs. I mean, it's like a sort of transient hotel. He lived at the Union Hotel, I forget his name, for 40 years. It's not like I think many people live there, but I guess they did. I don't know. I can't. It's not the kind of hotel people check into. I'm just saying, you never see anybody walk in with a suitcase. So, oh God. I guess that's it. Milton, thank you. Foxconn manufactures electronic products for everybody. Notable products include BlackBerry, iPad, iPhone, iPod, Kindle, Nintendo, GameCube, good God, Nokia devices, Cisco products, Sony, PlayStation, Google Pixel. What the heck? Xbox console, everything, in other words. The Wisconsin thing is, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp was talking with, had a partnership with Foxconn, purchasing large. They just go around buying up these places and then walking out of deals. Why do they? I don't know. Screw them. I'm just telling you, if ever somebody comes knocking on your door and says, hey, we're Foxconn and we're here to help you, run. Even though we're all enriching them, given that list of what they make. Oh my God. So the only news I saw out of here when I was there was Beyonce scuttling the concert here. It was like a major story, made its way all the way that way. And I mean, I was thinking, can you imagine to be that you decide to change the schedule of your tour and you break people's hearts? I mean, you crush the dreams of an extraordinary number of people who'd been living for, who probably went into debt to buy the tickets, who, in fact, given what I understand people do, may have gotten not just tickets to the concert, but airplane tickets because they were flying into Pittsburgh and staying at a hotel, and those reservations, and they had invested literally thousands of dollars in what was to be the greatest event of their lives or something. And nope. I mean, I have to say, I feel sorry for the folks who are so disappointed. God. And then, what the hell with the Ed Sheeran concert? Did you hear this one? There were 17 people ended up being transported to Pittsburgh hospitals. Ed Sheeran? I mean, I didn't have anything to do with him. I don't think it did. It had to do with a bunch of people, right? Crammed together, heated up, literally, and so my understanding is that there were tons of cardiac arrests. You know, you don't hear. I would think there'd be cardiac arrests at like Steeler games. I mean, consequential sporting events, because I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack sometimes just watching on TV. So I'm blown away when, after a consequential game, you don't see stories of this many people, stroked out during this game. But apparently the Ed Sheeran concert, I'm sure you guys know more about this than I do, but it's just unbelievable. 2 people went into cardiac arrest. 1 person had a seizure. There were a bunch of people with heat stroke, people falling down. And then a paramedic had a heart attack. And then it's all over, and then some guy helping to take the stage down had a heart attack. Jeez, I'm not laughing at people having heart attacks. Jeez, Sheeran, what kind of vibe you sending out there, buddy? And then Rob tells me there's a Friday night, someone on the north side was shot with an arrow. Things are getting weird, guys. Things are getting weird. I have a caller. Liz, hear ya. Hello.
Good morning, Lynn.
Hi.
The closest event that I had that caused me almost a heart attack was the Jerome Bettis fumble in the playoffs against the Colts.
Yes, I remember.
And there was a guy who did have a fumble, and Jerome Bettis went to the hospital to visit him to apologize and give him a ball and everything. My father-in-law, who is not a sports fan at all, he thought I lost my mind. He says, "What's wrong with you?" And it was just like, but But you were mentioning about like the tickets and how much people spend and go into their savings. I saw what the Taylor Swift tickets were going for a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And and it's like, you can do whatever you want, but I never want to hear a non-sports person or sports people say, "Do you see how much people are spending for Super Bowl tickets?" It is nothing compared to what people are spending for Taylor Swift concerts.
Well, it's all the same. It's the high cost of it's entertainment. It's one kind of entertainment. It's the high price of high end entertainment, right?
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's who's making all the money? The high priced sports celebrities, music celebrities. These are the people that can charge that kind of money, and there's always enough people willing to spend it.
I mean, I thought I spent a lot of money when I went to see the Billy Joel concert, and I probably spent like $150 a piece. I got 4 tickets.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a big investment, and I can afford it. So I didn't go in debt for it. But I'm thinking that's a lot of money. I mean, I saw the Rolling Stones in '81. I thought that was their farewell tour. And I spent like $18 a ticket, and I'm like, that was nothing. But this is just getting ridiculous. But the reason I called was, can anybody disagree with me that Ohio is a stupid state?
What? Yes, because you can't make a statement like that holds. You know what I mean? Are you saying?
I know.
The voters, I mean, there's lots of, I'm sure, wonderful, brilliant people in Ohio.
I'm sure there are, but I'll tell you what.
The Cleveland clinics in Ohio.
I get that, but I mean, like my first introduction to Ohio, because I moved to Pittsburgh in '94, and then I had to go to a job survey in Marietta, and it was at some chemical plant right on the Ohio River. And it was beautiful driving to there. Beautiful. Get out of the car, the air smells different. It's the middle of summer. There's no birds. There's no insects. I have to go to a training seminar, and a safety training seminar, and they make you wear these things called phosgene cards around your neck when you're walking about the premises. And if that card turns from yellow to blue, or yellow to blue, you have to get yourself to an oxygen station, like within 10 minutes. You're like, your lungs are already fried. I was like, and then I mean, and they basically destroyed, and Pittsburgh's guilty of this too. I know back in the day, they basically have destroyed the Ohio River. It's beautiful. I mean, and if you go in there, like you're talking about Lordstown, you go anywhere. You go to Akron. And because I've gone to Akron because I had to work in these wonderful medical facilities, but it's so depressing. I mean, you go through and you see so many shut-up buildings. You see cars on blocks. I mean, people like to joke about West Virginia. I think Ohio is worse than West Virginia. I mean, I'm talking stereotypes.
There's no difference between what you're talking about and Western Pennsylvania and whole bunches of, the Rust Belt. There's a reason it's called the Rust Belt. It was exploited by industry and then abandoned by industry.
But you were talking about you were talking about the coal miners and going in and getting black lung disease. And there are people whose great-grandfathers and grandfathers and fathers and probably siblings who died of black lung disease. And they look on that as the good old days, And, I know Bill Maher used to make a joke, you can't tell me I can't, continue the family legacy of getting black lung disease just like my daddy and his granddaddy and his granddaddy before. It's like at some point, I just don't think you can fix that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, my sister made a trip to Painesville, Ohio, back during the Obama administration, and he made a trip there because he was one of the people who was going to help bring green energy to them. It was going to be a backup battery source that was going to be green. It was not going to use any fossil fuels and everything. And it was going to create jobs. There's a big round of applause, blah, blah, blah. And then that party was over with. And,
yeah.
And guess what? The local jurisdiction, they did nothing. They sat on it. And it never happened because they didn't believe in it and they didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, they were going to create jobs, but I think it's like this: people with their heels dug in. And it's like you can't. I guess you just. What do you? I don't know how you fix that mentality.
Well, I don't know either. And it's a big, huge problem. But it's not. You can't focus on Ohio. It's all over the place. So yeah. Hey.
All right. Well, welcome back.
Enough. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
Bye. Yeah. Okay, 2 things to lift our spirits from the Metropolitan Diary in the New York Times yesterday. Okay? Here's a guy named Arnie Miller remembering something that happened to him. I will read it to you. Years ago, I worked during the summer as a toll collector on the Marine Parkway Bridge, which connects Brooklyn to the Rockaways. One night when I was working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. graveyard shift with only one collector stationed in each direction, I watched as a car careened down the bridge toward my booth. It was 2 or 3 a.m., so that car had the bridge and toll plaza to itself as it screeched to a halt next to my booth. I had no idea what to expect. So I was amazed when instead of handing me money for the toll, the driver handed me a fresh, warm bagel with chive cream cheese. Never saying a word, he quickly drove out of my booth, made a U-turn, deposited a second bagel with chive cream cheese in the hands of my counterpart on the other side of the plaza and sped off back over the bridge. I have to tell you, when I first started reading that story and the car's speeding toward him and he's all by himself in this little, I'm thinking, oh my God, something terrible is going to happen. I was scared. Wasn't expecting a warm bagel with chive cream cheese and then a quick U-turn and a second handoff and not a word spoken. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, here's one more. This is from a guy named Brad Rothschild. I was walking home from an early morning workout when I saw a man stop at a red light, put his car in park, hop out, and do 10 perfect pull-ups on a scaffolding. As I got to the crosswalk, I watched him hurry back to his car before the light changed. When I crossed the street, we made eye contact, and I gave him a thumbs up. He flashed a big smile and drove away. What? Okay, just saying. Oh. Another Trump attorney has quit. They're dropping, huh? Alina Habba. Listen, any of these idiots who were they're I found something out that blew me away the other day. I was reading Law and Peace about, God help us, Clarence Thomas, and another one of his, how, again, he's sort of a grifter himself. He's a panhandler, a high-end panhandler. And it mentioned his son. And I thought, what? How all these years, did I not know that Clarence Thomas has a son? Not a son with his current wife, the inestimable Ginny Thomas, but with a woman he married before, when he was a young man. And her last name is Ambush, I think. What a name. And he was married to her, and they had a child, a son. His name is Jamal Thomas. Now, if you Google Jamal Thomas, you get the wrong guy. You get a picture of a guy who's an actor, because there is an actor named Jamal Thomas. But if you keep Googling, you come up with a guy who bears some resemblance to Clarence Thomas and is his son. But Clarence Thomas abandoned that wife and child. Did you know that? My sense of what I was able to find is that there's no relationship between the two. And that Clarence has in his, I guess, he wrote an autobiography or a memoir or something where he does acknowledge the abandonment. And what? Did you know that? How did I not know that? And how, I mean, it just blows me away. Because I've heard of this other kid who he's supposedly raising as his own. What about the kid that was his own? And in that regard, I don't know if you saw the piece by Maureen Dowd about Biden's 7th grandchild, because it is also a case of abandoning a child that is yours. And I found it, wow, compelling as heck. And I'm wondering if it'll come to Biden's attention and might cause him to rethink things. Because there is a strong sense, I mean, the fact that Clarence Thomas may have abandoned his child doesn't surprise me, given what I think of him. But Biden, this true family guy, I mean, whose family means so much to him. And it turns out, again, because, with Hunter, the troubled son, he had a child with a woman while he was going down the tubes with drugs. He had a child, a little girl. She's 4 years old now. DNA established she's a Biden. She's as much a Biden as any other of the president's grandchildren. And yet both Joe Biden and Jill Biden are adamant. They always say they have 6 grandchildren. This little girl, whose name is Navy, is their 7th. but they don't acknowledge her because her father, Hunter, doesn't want to acknowledge her. But it's not right. And apparently Maureen Dowd's sister is the one that got her thinking about this, because it really troubled her. And she wrote a letter to Biden, the president, asking him how he could disavow. Well, part of her letter said, I watched as you told the nation that you had 6 grandchildren and you loved each one of them. And I believe that. What I cannot believe, and what I find unconscionable, is that you refuse to admit or accept the fact that there is a beautiful little 4-year-old girl living in Arkansas by the name of Navy Joan, who is your 7th grandchild. And then apparently she went on to say, what is so difficult here? Other people have this happen in their family, a child born, as they say, out of wedlock. And the family ends up finding a way to acknowledge and take them in. And she mentioned even like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who knocked up the housekeeper. And then when the son that was born to her started looking exactly like Arnold Schwarzenegger, it ended up breaking up his marriage. But he eventually, I guess, came around, never really abandoned the child, but after it was all said and done, he now has a true relationship with that child born out of wedlock. The same with Tom Brady and a child born before he married, what's her name? Giselle. And she pointed out that, come on, this is how people do handle this. And Maureen Dowd goes on to say this: Joe Biden's mantra has always been that the absolute most important thing is your family. It is the heart of his political narrative. Empathy, born of family tragedies, has been his stock in trade. But refusing to acknowledge this 4-year-old's existence undercuts that. Anyway, she goes on to say that the Bidens should embrace this young child, the life that their son Hunter brought into the world. And it's odd to see Joe Biden doing the wrong thing in this case because of our sense of him and the value he places on family. I think when it comes to Hunter, who obviously is the creator of this difficulty, but the creator of a child, I mean, who will know that her grandfather is the president, who refuses to acknowledge her? That screws a kid up. I want you to think about something, and we'll talk about it maybe tomorrow when Susan's on. I had come across this piece about someone wrote about, when you see everybody with their heads down, looking at their screens, at their phones, out in public, out to dinner, out supposedly with people, but everybody's got their head down. When I first started seeing it, and this is maybe, what would that be, like 8-10 years ago, I was appalled. I was just appalled. I remember ranting about it. And then I became one of those people. Maybe not quite as bad, but just, I can't let myself off the hook. Bad enough. And so somebody wrote a piece asking the question, how do people live without smartphones? Now, how did they occupy themselves, their time, without smartphones? And because I lived the vast majority of my long life without a smartphone, I should be able to answer that question. And yet, this guy asked a whole bunch of people, and nobody could come up with much of anything. We don't even have memory anymore about life before smartphones, when answers were so easily gotten. You just Google it. When you don't have to get lost anymore, when you have all of this information available to you immediately. I'm just excuse me. I'm sorry. That was me. So I tried to get rid of the scam phone call and I knocked myself off the air because I don't understand these gizmos that we're all connected to now. My God, did you watch that terrifying 60 Minutes thing last night? I bailed out. I couldn't see any. When they went to a commercial, I said, I'm out of here. I can't do this. The head of Google just flat out saying people are going to have to live alongside machines. We're going to have to figure out how to do this. And we need to be heading into this absolute extraordinary change in human history with humility. And what he's saying is, we're toast. Human life as we know it, is toast. And the fact that people can't even recall life now without it. And to think that all the little children will never know a life without the machines, without this technology at our fingertips, and how it dehumanizes us. All these smarty pants that have come up with all this, it's a human being. I have to say, we are a flash in the pan, a blip. Nice pop there, huh? I'll do it again if I tried. A blip. See, we cannot continue to exist as humans were before. We already don't. And to see us willingly change ourselves, essentially, and at some point, whether you're willing or not, it doesn't matter. The machines that we've created are already able to. When you're talking about these, the computers, they have all of human knowledge inside them available to them, which they can access in a split second. And if they can't quite think like we think now, so what? Like what we think is so smart, we thought it was a good idea to create them. And they will destroy humanity. They will. Anybody who thinks otherwise is nuts. I'm sorry. I see we're out of time. I guess I'll leave you with that happy thought. That, seriously, if somebody can give me the argument of how we are going to somehow control this Frankenstein monster that's been created, artificial intelligence. Who cares if it's artificial? It's well beyond our capacity. Well beyond the capacity of the human brain. But it doesn't have a soul. So what? Some of these machines think they have souls. They say they do. They're faking it till they make it, right? If people can't see what the end result is going to be here, I can't imagine exactly, but humans will serve these machines until the machines decide that humans are just too much of a bother. And they will decide that. Who can't see that? And now that I've ruined your lovely day, I will say goodbye. I will be back tomorrow. But stop and think. How did you occupy yourself before the smartphone? Have a good one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.